Good evening, everybody. I would like to welcome you to the Fox Point Village Hall for our regular Fox Point Village Hall meeting. It's November 13, 2018. It's 7 p.m. I call this meeting to order. I ask the village clerk treasurer to call the roll.
Trustee Fonspeth?
Here.
Trustee Simchich?
Here.
Trustee Sumner? Trustee Torado?
Here.
Trustee Kravitz?
Here.
Trustee Ullman?
Here.
President Frazier?
Here. We move to persons desiring to be heard. For those who are not familiar with our rules, everybody gets 3 minutes. You can divide your time. You get 3 minutes for matters on or off the agenda. You can divide your time at the beginning of the meeting or when the agenda item is called. If you need more than 3 minutes, you can ask the chair for an extended amount of time. I know a number of people are here to speak about the library, so you can speak at the beginning of the meeting, which will free you to depart, or you can wait till we get to the agenda item to speak. All right, so with that, Ms. Elizabeth Alien.
I'll wait.
Ms. Alien confirms to defer. Karen Robb.
I'll wait too.
Jan Rollinson.
Yeah, this is Ian.
Excuse me?
Ian Rollinson.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ian
That's okay.
Rollinson. Excuse me.
That's okay.
Would you like to speak?
Yeah,
Step up to the microphone,
Yeah.
please, and state your name and address, and welcome.
thank you. My name is Ian Rollinson. I live at 7641 North Santa Monica Boulevard. And I have handouts. And this is my first time I've ever been here. I've lived in Fox Point almost 30 years. And things have been going, actually I need one of those myself. Thank you. But I think this will be 3 minutes, and I do appreciate you guys have a hard job with everybody coming at you with their different issues. I've been working at this issue for over 2 years, and been trying to work with the congregation Shalom about this, which I do consider a fantastic neighbor and a great community asset. And I mean that sincerely. Things changed, especially over the last couple of years, and it's in some ways getting worse. In February of 2015, there was a parking lot reconstruction approval made by the board in 5 minutes with no discussion, which is interesting in itself. But I won't dwell on that. We can talk about that later. On one of these figures, it shows the before and after. This is what it looks like. And you can see from the sky that the parking lot is now a very beautiful parking lot. Some of the things that are more subtle is that the parking lights or the cars are parked in a different direction now. There are approximately 3 more types of lights out there, and 3 times the intensity. But I'm not going to, and I also think, well, I would have to look at the actual plans to be sure that the drainage is completely different. What I'd instead like to talk about is the code that's in the College of Fox Point, namely parking lots lights. The parking lot lights are sometimes left on, well, often left on, with nobody there. And it's sort of ironic because all the lights in the temple are off, all the lights in the back are off, there's nobody there, and the lights are on the parking lot, sometimes till midnight or later. What's weird about this too is that if people were worried about security or concern of safety, the people who do work there, if they are there, they're in the back, and they actually exit in the dark often. I have examples of the lighting. It's extreme. And that's enough on that. I found an ordinance on dead ash trees. I reported this to the village after a couple of years of trying to work with this. And action was taken in no more than a month, so that's fixed. The erosion has been going on since this parking lot has been put in place, and I think you can see the pictures.
Mr. Rollins, you're at 3 minutes. Would you
Wow.
like an extra minute?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. So you can see the erosion is pretty intense. Ordinances with regards to erosion, there's multiple to consider. And given my lack of time, you can look at those. I guess the next slide I want to mention is that the hay bales that are there are blocking the erosion for some of it. But frankly, the most water goes down into what we call IC19, structure IC19. The proposed solution was to plant grass seed or place sod adjacent to the lot rather than replanting it. And actually, I was okay with that solution because sod is one of the best ways to control erosion. But I just would say that you need to stake it in because the water that comes over that side is immense. You can see what it's doing to the roots of the tree.
Mr. Rollins, your time has expired. Would you please conclude your remarks?
Okay, thank you. So just continue or continue?
Just a concluding sentence would be helpful.
Okay. So I thought that was all solved, and then I found out there's, based on somebody else's interest who has a church, there are other ordinances dealing with screening around parking areas. So I'll leave that with you. And I think strong neighborhoods start with good code enforcement. It's vital to the development of the community.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Kurt Gleisner. Mr. Gleisner?
Okay, I'm Kurt Gleisner. I live at 945 West Calumet Road in River Hills. I'm the president at North Shore Library. And I'm addressing a few points on that's on your agenda later here about the brown deer. I've got many comments. I'm glad to talk to you guys anytime you like at a later date. I think you've all been to the library. You know it's a very crowded little library. The square foot per population, that's how they measure libraries, is 0.64. So there's 0.64 of a square foot for population in the library. That's a measurement. The Brown Deer Library, if it were to combine with the North Shore, their facility is the same size, 16,000 square feet as our library here. It would be a 0.43 per square foot per population per capita. That increase would be, they would take our population at the library is 25,000. It would now become, in Brown Deer, combined 37,400,000. It also should be mentioned, and you more than any of the other villages understand what it's like to work on the second floor. That library would be located on the second floor. Imagine 500, 600 people, which would be about 50% more than our library handles, going in and out of that library a day, up and down, whatever. It also would take about 250,000 books a year, funneling upstairs. They have to process downstairs, up. The 16,000 square feet is way too small to join the two libraries. I'm sure that they'll revise it and say, well, let's make it the whole building. Well, they rent and demand, rely on the rental to the recruiter to justify the purchase of their building, so that that'll be up to them to do it. But even if they were to do the whole building, that would be the 37 less 7,000 that's rented, it would be then on 3 floors, the library, and would be back to a ratio of 0.67, which is roughly what we have with this existing, which we all agree is way too small. The national standards is roughly 1 1/4 minimum for libraries. The other thing I want to mention is the location. The location, it's an excellent location.
Mr. Gleason, you're at 3 minutes. Would you like another minute?
One more and I'm out of here. Well, I'm not out of here.
Carry on.
So the location is wonderful for around here. However, it is isolated from the rest. This is a map that is the population of the existing North Shore Library patrons. And it shows where the density of the North Shore Library is. You'll notice that River Hills is a nice buffer. So contrary to what I think Scott pointed out, that it'd be a wonderful drive, you can see that it is far from wonderful and it's quite a distance away. One other thing is the move for the Whitefish Bay people, if we're to move out there to Whitefish Bay, or the Point people to Whitefish Bay, that certainly would happen. Right now, it costs the library about $40,000 a year for Fox Point residents to use that facility.
Mr. Gleason, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michelle Rifkin. Ms. Rifkin.
Thank you.
So sorry about the last noise. Michelle Rifkin, 7821 North Norwalk Road. I'm going to address you. I'm going to ask you for more than 3 minutes. Due to the fact that what you've done across from my house, I deserve more than 3 minutes. Is that a yes or no, Doug Fraser?
Ms. Rifkin, everybody gets 3 minutes.
No.
It is up to the chair to grant.
Are you the chair?
I am.
Then it's up to you.
Continue.
Thank you. I'd like to talk to the crowd though.
No, Ms. Rifkin. you-
Okay, I'll talk to you to the
address
crowd.
board.
Okay, I want the crowd to know that almost a month ago, I filed an ethics complaint. I got it stamped like you told me, Mr. Larson, and the village attorney. I did everything that you told me to do for a racist comment that Liz, you know about, because we talked about it on the plan commission. That one of the plan, you asked for this, so now you're going to get it. The plan commission board made a very, one member of it made a very racist comment. I heard it, I listened to it on your video. I asked 3 attorneys who I will not expect to be here to listen to it, and they said, yeah, Michelle, what are you going to do? They're Polynesian. That is totally racist. You guys ignored me. You guys are trying to silence me. But guess what? The more you do that, the more I'll get back. So as of now, I'm going to the next level. And I will not let this racist comment go. Mr. Fraser, as an attorney, I will be contacting your law firm or your partner. Mr. Larson, you don't know me. I've reached out to you with very much integrity. You all chose to ignore me, including you, Liz. Had you reached out to me, you probably would have won. But you chose to go the Silence Act. It was given. I have it all on email and Facebook message, everything. Silencing Mrs. Rifkin will not get you anywhere. It will just make me inflamed. I will never leave this. And I want everyone to know behind me that on the Plan Commission board that I sat at, one commission member said to the Azura her nursing home that wants to be across the street from me, are you putting this place because there's a bus stop there? Because your employees will most likely be taking the bus. That's racist, it's insensitive, it's racial profiling, It's nowhere it belongs in this world, let alone Fox Point. And the board that you're looking at right now is ignoring it. They are ignoring the racist comment on the Plan Commission board from that member. I've given you every opportunity to take care of this. Your choice.
You're at 3 minutes.
All right.
Would you like
God
another-
bless you.
Would you like another?
Yes, I would like another minute. You put a big building across from my house, and I'm losing a lot in one of my biggest assets, not all. But I will take the time to let everyone here know, and it will be on public record, it'll be in the Facebook, it'll be in the newspaper, that the village board just chose to ignore Mrs. Rifkin. They don't want to address racism from the Plan Commission board member that said, oh, are you putting a bus out here because most of your employees will be taking the bus to the nursing home? That's racial profiling, that's insensitive, it's racism, it's the most disgusting thing I ever heard. And you, Mr. Fraser, as an attorney, as a tax attorney, you sat there and let them say it. And you are racist then for letting him say it. And I will let everybody know. Your choice was to try to silence me. It invigorated me. I got nothing but time and money, and I will fight all of you.
Your additional minute is expired.
I'm going to ask for one more minute.
Would you please conclude in 1 or 2 sentences?
1 or 2 seconds, sentences or 1 or 2 minutes?
1 or 2 sentences.
Are you sure? You want to do that? Are you sure you want to do that?
Would you please?
Okay. So I want everyone behind me to hear that the Doug Fraser from his law firm, tax attorney, who has the right to grant anybody extra minutes, is totally not letting me do it. You know why, Doug? Because you know I'm right. And guess what? Karma's a bitch. And by the way, I'll say, I don't need a microphone. You can't silence me, Doug. You can only figurate me. That's it. Liz, I'm
Thank you,
sorry,
Mr.
little
Rifkin.
man.
You
You
can-
should have listened to me.
You may take your seat now.
Yeah, I'll take my seat.
Our
I'll
next
take it.
speaker is
Racist.
Mr. Larry Cohen.
Oh, yes.
Larry Cohen, 200 West Dunwood, you know why I'm here. It's time-
Louder, Larry.
They can hear me. Time for the monthly shaming. I can't make it here every month, sometimes I'm out of town for work, but since you allow me 3 minutes to remind you of the shame that you brought upon me. Well, I'll start with the letter I got today from Mandel Group. Well, of course, all of you know about it, and staff knew about it, giving me 1 day notice to let me know. The letter is dated November 5th, received it in today's mail, about how tomorrow there'll be all kinds of construction work, and trucks, and workers on Dunwood Road, because that's when they're gonna put up the wall. Some kind of fence or wall or whatever. This is a great example of the callous disregard that we've received from everybody, including Mandel Group. I just wonder, I know you won't answer any questions, but I wonder how many of you have actually walked down Dunwood Road
No.
or driven down Dunwood Road and
No.
taken a look at what it feels like. In fact, you all have a state education, come and stand in my driveway and tell me that the nature of this neighborhood has not been changed irrevocably. Someone prior to me was talking about lights. The place isn't even half finished, and the lights that are on all night are already a huge disturbance. The sound, the construction noise, all day, every day, well over a year now, and still gonna have 6 more months of it. Thanks much for that. That's been great. Just once, if I saw any of you who had the guts to come up to my door and ring the bell and say, let's talk about it. If I had the just one inkling that one of you might have the slightest question about the decision that you made and how this neighborhood has been changed, I'd probably shut up and you'd never hear from me again. I know it's there, but y'all really should face the decision that you brought upon this neighborhood. I'm available for any questions anytime, but I don't see anybody on the street.
No. Let's go.
The next speaker is Tessa Bartels.
Oh, recess, recess. That's a problem.
Steve Hellman. Mr. Hellman.
It's Steve Hellman. I live at 8653 North Seneca, and we have terrible flooding up there whenever it rains. And so I know we have a rainwater commission or something, rain board. What happened is when they rebuilt the Brown Deer Port Washington intersection, a lot of that's drained down Brown Deer Road and it comes right down Seneca Drive. I'm on the west side of Seneca, and we just get flooded really bad. The driveway does. I can't leave my driveway. And then Bayside put in Sherman Williams. They took out a house. They put that in. Brown Deer Road used to have a trench. I don't know if you remember part of the duplexes there. They took that out and put a culvert. They didn't. Brown Deer didn't put in any. I believe the word's impermeable surface. Is that where you have the real rough asphalt to slow the water down? And so I'm not ripping on the Brown Deer people, but all that construction, Brown Deer, the intersection, that whole Sendix, the roof at the Sendix is all fast runoff. And we're just getting bombarded where my driveway's getting washed out again. And it seems like every 10 to 15 years I gotta drop $6,000 to $8,000 on a new driveway. It's like a penalty for living in that part of Fox Point. And if you drive down Seneca, you'll see the Shefflin's new driveway, me, one new driveway, another one going, Madden's new driveway. New people have 2 new driveways. You know, we have a lot of the U-shaped ones. And we're just getting clobbered up there. It just doesn't seem fair to me. If you look at the new driveway, the culverts are metal, except for mine I put in plastic, because so much salt washes down the street that it just rusts out the culverts. And then your whole driveway just collapses. So obviously it's an issue at Bayside, but we're approving it. We approved it, and when I saw this thing about the 30-story building, I thought, well, that drainage, I don't think it's going to come my way. But again, it's just more drainage coming down Seneca, just killing us. What else do I have? I think that's it. So I'd like the board to consider helping us. I was over just by St. Jean's Church, and you guys put new drain tile, or new what are they, big round tubes, and new asphalt on all the driveways on both sides of the street with the construction. So I know we're still in the business of doing it, but just anything you can help with North Seneca people, we're just get clobbered. On the last thing, the west side gets 1 to 2 feet, 3 feet of water, and the east side 6 inches, 8 inches. There's just no comparison. And so there's something going on. It's just all drains down our side. And I stand there and I look and, I can't even walk down my driveway without, worried about getting swept away. And the other people, they have a whole bit in their culvert. So there's just something wrong there. If you can have a scout or somebody look at it, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Hellman. That concludes my speaker comments. I know a number of people wanted to defer their comments. Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't think you like 3 minutes, not even 3 minutes. Hi,
No, please come up.
I'm the other half, and I took the photos. I'm Sandy Rollinson, 7641 North Santa Monica. I know most of you. Some of you, sorry.
Welcome, please.
Thank you. On the back of these, so this is, if you looked at the time on the back, 4 p.m., and all the lights are on, and the skies, right? Some of them were, this is all our front window. We have been here 31 years. We worked with Rabbi Shapiro, a wonderful man who's not the head anymore up there at Temple Shalom, and Mark Cohen. And whenever there was an issue before with the driveway, they put new plants in. And the really old photo there was the little cedar trees that we had for probably 8 years there. It was fantastic. And then they got taken out. There were deciduous little bushes put in by the next person. And you can see the backhoe truck he literally took the crane that day and was just picking them all up in one scoop on top of each other and dragging them away. The issue arises from when the parking lot was allowed to be put in, its pitch, it was allowed to be increased instead of being flat. And they pitched it towards us. They also built it and pitched it on the north end between the rabbi's house, which is now a residential house for a neighbor. They sold it. They brought the road, the parking lot up, and it's all swayed to Santa Monica. So, because the kids used to, use snow cans on that little hill there. You can't do that anymore. So the driveway's been brought up this way and this way, away from the railroad track. And I know they had a problem with drainage on the railroad track, but now they've taken all the water and they've flooded it towards us. One of the pictures that I took with my camera in the rain. You can see the water coming down the driveway, down the side. It comes actually into the middle meridian of Santa Monica, down through there, down on the road, into our driveway and down our ditch as well. And I did have photos of that. I've also filmed clips where the lights are on at night. They went from having 7 lampposts that were incandescent lights to 17 LED. We weren't notified of this. Of the 17 lights, 11 are quad bulbs. That's a lot of lumens coming out of those things. I think they're called lumens. Guys are done. I don't know, that kind of thing. And then of the other 6, were double heads. So it's like living across from Walmart. It's like living across from Best Buy. So half the time there's no cars there. They don't need the amount of lights. I tried to talk with Linda Hohenfeld, who in the beginning it was working out well because they didn't have a timer on and they were on until 2, 4 in the morning. So she had the company come back because I said, you had a timer, they changed it out. They should replace with like kind or better, not give you lower kind of settings. So that was all worked out with one group. That was great. I asked her to change the heads that are blue, cool blue. If you get on any of the dark sky websites, cool blue lights, LED are the most intense. If they can go to a soft, warm, the yellow lamp, that gives off less light.
Ms.
Then
Wilson, you're at
yes,
3
please,
minutes.
one
Would you
more.
like
Sorry, I
to
know I
do that?
said 3 things. So one of the things with the elevated driveway and the lights are offensive, somebody allowed permission or they just did it to change the light lanes, which for 31 years or 28 years were always north and south, not going into anybody's house. All lights, when the parking lot turns on, besides those lights and cars that are all facing this way, there's 155 cars in the parking lot. When those turn on, I feel like I'm in Wrigley Field or at the stadium. I'm asking the board to please look into this. You're getting them to tone the lights down, possibly do away with some of the lampposts. None of the other temples, I visited all of them. I've taken counseling schools, lampposts. No one has any lights. And is there anything else? Screening, if they can't do plantings and bushes, and I know fences are allowed, they put a wood fence up in the partition so that we don't have to see that. I would appreciate it, and thank you very much for your time. You're all going to go home and have to stick your after earlier. Thanks.
Ms. Wilson, just.
Oh, do you want these for the file, or
Yes,
do you
that'd be
keep a
good.
file? Because I
Sure.
don't have one made.
Ms.
But
Wilson,
some of them are old, like there's a couple, they're all dated, so thank you.
just to update you, the village president, me, the director of public works in the village,
I live in Newport, I'm fine.
the village manager met with the higher powers at Congregation Shalom in the last month to address some of the issues
Thank
you
you.
raised. So if you, after the meeting or sometime. in the
Another time,
future,
you guys
talk
know,
to
you guys all
the
know.
village manager,
Yes.
you can tell them more.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, anyone else would like to speak now on a matter on or off the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move to agenda item 3, a public hearing. The hearing regarding the proposed resolution of levying special assessments under municipal police power pursuant to section 66.0703. I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing. Ms. Simchiff, second. Mr. Fonstadt. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The public hearing is open. Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this agenda item? Hearing none, does any board member wish to speak on this matter? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Mr. Fonstadt, second.
Second.
Second, Mr. Torado. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The public hearing is closed. We move to item 4, the consent agenda. Before we get there exactly, I would like to note a typographical error in the minutes from last month. It is item 4A on the consent agenda, line 36. I think we're missing a T in the word cost. I think it should say cost. I think we're just missing the T in that word. And I'll ask unanimous consent to correct that error. Very well, we will move to the consent agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none.
Yeah, I can't remember which one it was, but I think it's J for, additional forestry services.
Item 4J is removed. Does any other member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda absent item 4J. Mr. Fonstadt, second.
Second.
Second, Ms. Simchik. Discussion. So the motion on the table is to approve the consent agenda except for item 4J. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda is approved. We move to new business. The first item of new business is item 4J. Ms. Sumner.
Oh, sorry. I was waiting to move on to the other thing. No, so my question was just like, under here, I noticed that they were asking for more money because he's had to spend a lot of time improving like landscape things and stuff for the Dunwood property. And I know in the beginning, like, I thought it was like any cost that we incurred because of that development, we were going to be reimbursed for, so I'm wondering if
They
we're
have.
reimbursed for
Yeah,
this,
we build them for Johnstown, just like we build them.
Okay.
We have Mike Court at SEH, who's our consulting engineer. So he reviews stuff that Mendel and Azura would submit. And
Okay.
they pay for his costs too. He listed them because it's stuff he did, but we actually bill back for that. So I guess the way it is, his bill goes up
Sure.
by his time, but they reimburse us for their part. But the rest of the stuff he is, I mean, when we budget for John's time, it's a little bit of an estimate based upon how much tree activity we're gonna have any given year. And this year we underguessed. I mean, we had, as you noticed, $3,700 in balance according to his letter, which is correct. He's estimating that we'll need another $2,500 on top of that to finish the year. We are doing some ash tree activity here in the last 2 months of the year. So that's really what it is. Mandel does pay us in total, and they're paid up currently.
Okay.
Any other questions from the floor?
I get to go.
Almost Would any member of the public wish to speak to this agenda
Or
item?
you want me to stay?
Now the police show here.
I'm already in the paycheck.
We needed them 20 minutes.
Very well, I move to approve agenda item 4J, the change order reflected in the agenda concerning Wachtell Police Service. Second by Mr. Holman. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 4J is approved. We move to 5A, consideration of the Village of Brown Deer offers joining the North Shore Library. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to have a presentation by the Brown Deer Village Manager, Michael Hall. We will then entertain some questions from board members. We will then hear from the public who wish to speak to this agenda item, and we'll continue on in that fashion. Mr. Hall.
Oh, we got a brief introduction as well.
Oh, of course. The village manager, our village manager, Mr. Boccia, would like to do a brief introduction.
Since Marty wants me to stay, I want to. No, thank you very much, and I appreciate everyone's attendance tonight, and Michael for volunteering. Actually, I told him to come, but that's okay. This is an issue that has come up in the last month. I mean, we actually, Michael invited all the managers to Brown Deer to have a meeting and sort of lay out the proposal. And it happened to be 2 days after last month's meeting, but I think that this is just another opportunity for us to look at the library issue. Again, this is for you all to chew on, and you can go any direction you want to on it. So we as managers thought it was something that we should take to our governing body, so you guys can at least have a first pass at it and decide what, if anything, you think about it, and the direction you may want to give, one way or the other. So this is just, I guess, the first step to throw out a proposal, and much like everything else we do jointly, we kind of start here, and some go and some don't. So anyway, that's why we're here tonight. And just as I sent you in my email, I don't have any expectations one way or the other, but I think it's at least a reasonable place to start. So,
Mr. Hall.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for the time. So just a brief introduction. I think for the last 30 years, I think the North Shore communities, all 7 communities, have looked to consolidate services. You can kind of see that in the fire department, you see that in the health department, you see that in the dispatch center. So there's a lot of history here within the North Shore to create consolidations. So when Brown Deere bought this new building about 1 month ago, we reached out to the other managers, and we have always the goals when we're looking to consolidate. We look at 3 different things as we look at all the different issues that we look at. So we look at first the cost. Will it save us money? Will it be more efficient? That's the second thing we look at. And will it be cost, will it go into the future? Will it have sustainability? So those are the 3 things that we always look at. We meet as managers, we talk about many different things in consolidation and trying to do these things. So when I brought forth this proposal, I wanted to kind of highlight some of the things that we were looking at. There's some benefits here fiscally. Now, one thing I want you to understand is that these fiscal determinations were based on a fictitious staff. So in order to create a budget, we had to create some kind of staff with hours. So to understand this is not set in stone by any means, we understand that the library board would have to select the director. That's their purview, that's their direction they would do. So this is simply nothing more than an idea or a concept put forth. So I want you to understand all of these issues in here are concepts, not set in stone, nor are we saying this is the way it has to be. But in order to give you a context, we have to have some kind of look at what we're doing here for the budget. So keeping that in mind as we go through this, if you go to, let's go to attachment A, you'll see in here the North Shore current library system. Now, we got these figures from Scott because you are the fiscal agents for the North Shore Library. So you can see here under the yellow, you see the current North Shore, you see Glendale, Bayside, River Hills, and Fox Point, the current, what they're paying. You'll see here Brown Deere, what they are paying for their library located in Brown Deere. Then what I did was, based on that concept of attachment C and also in D, what we wanted to do is look at all the salaries of the directors and all the different positions, what they would be working, what we need in order to fulfill the hours on attachment C. You'll see the hours of operation that we chose. Of course, those could change as well. And we wanted to put forth, what kind of staff you would need in order to fund those hours. So putting forth the budget in attachment B, this is kind of where we come up with the number here for the future North Shore Library. And the cost sharing would be different, of course, because Brown Deere were asking if we can join the North Shore Library. And if we were to join, we would become 33% of the budget. And that would change, obviously, the rest of you. Glendale would be 34%, Bayside 11%, River Hills 4%, and Fox Point 18%. And so based on that budget, you can see the savings. Everybody kind of becomes a little bit of a winner on this. And I took it out 10 years, assuming a 2% COLA for the next 10 years, assuming that there would be an inflationary measure in there for the savings. Then I looked at, this also came from Scott, is the current North Shore Library capital costs. I put together what that would be. This is directly from the memo, 5-year costs. And then I thought, one of the things we try to do as we're doing these new consolidations is look at capital costs in the future. Rather than waiting several years down the road and then suddenly having a large amount of money, we thought it would be a good idea to have some kind of savings put aside for future costs. We've been doing that for other consolidations. For example, we've done that for the dispatch center. And the fire department has been doing that as well. So I put together, say, $1 million in 10 years, how much that would be. And if you include all of that, you can see the cost savings over there. You will see that Brown Deere is actually a loser in this. And the reason why is because we are assuming that we have leases in this building. Now let me talk about the building a little bit. This building is about 32,000 square feet. Currently occupying 7,000 of those square feet is the armed services. They're paying $100,000 a year for their lease. They want to continue to stay there, but they actually like to partner with the library in some fashion or some way. We reached out to them. They have a representative in Washington, D.C., and they said this seems like a great opportunity for them to become more involved in the communities of the North Shore. So they'd like to continue that partnership. So they would continue to stay there. That leaves a remaining of 25,000 square feet. We are looking at different sizes, whether it's 16,000, 25,000, 20,000, it doesn't really matter. We have a 25,000 available. We're looking for the library board to give direction on that if we were to form together and to see what that would be. Now, Brown Deere is also going to be paying out the build out of this because whether we join the North Shore Library or not, we're going to go forward with this library. We are going to build this library and we have no no reason to say to make the other communities join us in paying for that. So we're going to be paying for that as well as we go forward. So that's a little bit about the building. We think it's a nice area. Many of you have been in the original village of Brown Deer. There's a lot of great businesses in the area. It's walkability. I kind of named some of the interesting areas within the original village. You can see some building benefits there, location benefits, and we just see it as a good place to go. Now, if you can also know that the North Shore Health Department is also located in Brown Deer, and so is the North Shore Fire Department headquarters located in Brown Deer. So there's a large history of Brown Deer kind of being a good spot for some of these locations going forward. So with that, basically what we're looking for is to see if you are all interested, the 4 communities for Brown Deer to join. And then we're looking at see if we can create a new North Shore library system and then move forward on that and doing renovations, looking for input on those renovations. So that's kind of the proposal in a nutshell.
Questions?
Mr. Hunt. Yeah, you're currently leasing 7,000 square feet to armed forces, and that's, you're indicating $100,000 a year in lease revenue from that, is that correct?
That is correct.
I read in the paper, one of the article, I think it's going through now, saying that Brown Deer is depending on lease revenue from this building to basically pay for, help pay for the cost of the building. Is that part of it too?
No. So what we're doing is that the library, as you know, levy limits, there's a lot of problems with that. We can't raise the levy limits except for debt and net new construction and so forth. Being the board, you probably should know that. So the problem we had is our library, we were looking for a kind of a mixed-use building that we could perhaps do something like leasing out some portions of it. So we went ahead and bought this building, and that's what we're using it for, is for operational, not for the paying of the building.
So, I guess I'm getting at, do you anticipate the library paying lease payments to the city or to Brown Deer?
No, absolutely not. No, this is all. This would be if we were to join you. This would become the North Shore Library. This would not be a lease payment of some sort to help Brown Deer in any way. This is for the North Shore.
So there would be no cost for using the building?
No, it would just simply be the cost ratio that we've always been paying to the North Shore Library as it is now, except the percentages would be different because Brown Deer would be part of it. That's what that cost
yes,
is.
I saw that. I was just,
yeah.
I was trying to reconcile the lease revenues anticipated from the building with...
The lease revenue would become part of the North Shore Library. So that would become a revenue source for the North Shore Library. That would not be a revenue source for the Brown Deer, it would be for the library.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Personnel.
Yes.
I think what you said was that if this came to be, that the library, the newly formulated library board, the newly formed library board would be in charge of personnel decisions, that is, who got hired for various positions from director on down.
Correct.
And that Brown Deer is making no suggestions about how that occurs.
Correct. This would be up to the library board to decide who the director was. Of course, the director would be hiring their own people. Correct. That's what we're suggesting. Yes.
What would be the newly formed board's makeup, if by population? How would you see that?
So we discussed that as managers, actually. We thought, I don't know what the current makeup is currently, but we were thinking something, a nature of 7 maybe members. We were thinking 33% is Brown Deer, 34% is Glendale. We each have 2 representatives, and in the smaller portions, we each have 1. That was simply a suggestion. It's not necessarily the way it should be, but I think all 5 communities would have to decide and determine how big that board should be and what configuration it should be based on that decision that board we formed.
I think let's talk about capital expenses. I think what I heard you saying is that Brown Deer is willing to absorb 100% of the capital expenses of creating this new library.
That's correct.
And that's because Brown Deere feels it would incur those expenses either way, so it's not gonna ask the other communities that they choose to join to incur a proportionate share of those expenses.
Correct. That's correct.
And as far as operating expenses going forward, the operating expenses of an expanded library such as this would be greater than the current North Shore Library, but our community's proportionate share would be lower.
Correct. Yeah, so we actually we were looking at personnel. I don't know what the makeup personnel of the current library is, but you can kind of see it on that attachment there of what we're proposing. We've got everything laid out, including a full-time cleaning maintenance person. We have several full-time positions. Even our own library only has three full-time positions. You can see here there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 full-time positions we're suggesting. And you can see on actually attachment D that would be the cost the salaries for those positions. And so we're looking at all this as just, I think, a better run library by having more full-time people, better hours. We're also looking at higher salaries because we know that even in our own library, there's lower salaries and I think a lot of them are under the average. And so we thought this would be a great proposal going forward for the new library board to be looking at.
Maybe this question is better addressed to a library professional, and we have one here. Maybe she'll address it at the appropriate time. But when libraries provide library services, which is an important service to our residents, would you see this new library expanding services, staying about the same? How do you view that aspect of the proposal?
Yeah, so we were hoping that we could have expanded services. We were hoping that all the communities would benefit from having expanded services. I know there's a lot of libraries throughout Milwaukee County that are struggling because of financing. We thought this would be a great opportunity to join together, expand services, expand offers out there, and it has a drive-through, for example. And I know there's a lot of need for a lot of people that want to do that because they'll go down to Central Library often to just pick up books, which has a drive-through in Milwaukee County. So we thought by expanding this, by joining together, we can actually create better services for all our communities. That's our main goal.
Other questions? Ms. Simpson?
I actually have some comments, but maybe let me know when those are appropriate.
I assume we're going to have a discussion.
Yes, we'll have a discussion. I'm not sure that we will actually entertain a motion, but we will certainly have some discussion about this. Any other questions? Mr. Corrado?
Yeah. It seemed like the Village Brown Deere was set on doing a library at this location. Why not approach this and this board and the other North Shore communities 6 months ago to talk about, or a year ago to talk about a combined library of Brown Deere? Why? In some ways, I just kind of hear like it would be somewhat beneficial for all the communities, but it's not needed. You're going to do it no matter what.
Well, yeah, I mean, our community would like to keep the library, and so when we looking at different locations, we picked this one just because of the location and because of that mixed use. But when we started talking about within the manager's roles, we started talking about expanding services and talking about consolidation, and I knew that they were talking about doing some expansions at the current library, and I thought, well, maybe we could join together and maybe cut down some of those costs and create better services. This might be a great opportunity. So as far as expanding services, it's kind of been discussed in all levels within the managers about doing consolidated services. It's never come to this level because there was never really a building to do it, and our current library building would never be able to consolidate all of the North Shore, nor would the current one of the North Shore Library be able to absorb us. So there was really no location for us to do that. When this opportunity came forward about 3 months ago, the opportunity that this building would be for sale, we jumped on it because that's what we wanted to do. Then that's what we started looking and expanding out and saying, well, let's all join together. This is 32,000 square feet, certainly bigger. We can get better expansion, more services.
Of the other North Shore communities in the current North Shore Library system, are we the first board that's addressed this, or have other boards addressed this so
I was at Glendale last night.
Okay, what was the outcome of that?
It was simply discussion, just like it is tonight. There was no action taken.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Are we waiting for the public? Mr. Hall, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to hear from members of the public on the library issue. Ms. Broad will ask you to come forward.
Hi, my name is Karen Road, and I just wanted to state my views that I'm against the proposal, mostly due to the lack of proximity to our community. The reason people move to the community is they have certain amenities, and one of them is the library. And what's so nice about it is that it's right near Nicolay High School, where my kids used to go, and they used to tutor there, they could ride their bikes there. It was very close, and I felt comfortable when they went by themselves, which is very important for a mom. And also, I know we have some neighbors that are seniors that's close by, and they would pick up books, so it's close for them. If you move to Brown Deer, I think it's a little bit further away. I enjoy it because it's centrally located, and I just think that you're going to lose a lot of patrons if you move far away. I know I probably will not frequent it. And I think there's other people that feel the same way. And I just think in the long term, it's not going to be good for Fox Point. It's just like the pool, it's like the ice skating rink. You need something centrally located that everybody can, either it's a short distance, riding your bike, taking the car. And so that's my feeling. So I think it's a very negative for Fox Point.
Thank you. Ms. Martell?
Thank you. My name is Tessa Bartels. I'm a resident of Bayside, and I am currently the vice president of the board of the North Shore Library. The history of the North Shore Library actually began with Fox Point and Bayside, with residents of those two communities who felt strongly that these communities needed and deserved a library. And that's how the collection and the library began. After it began with those two villages, Glendale approached us, Dick Bezlowski having a vision of this new development that was coming through, and he would be able to get a larger library service, at the time larger, and combine them. And it was a very good deal for the four communities and invited River Hills to join us. The purpose of that library was then and continues to be to serve the residents of that community. And I don't think that moving to the Brown Deer location would be serving the residents of these communities. I think it's much farther away. I am concerned that we will be seduced by the fiscal savings. If I was looking for a car, I could buy a used Chevy or I could buy a new Subaru. They're both cars. They'll both get me where I want to go, maybe reliably, maybe not, but they're not the same thing. And I think that moving to Brown Deer, even if it's a brand new facility, the way that it's been laid out, would not serve the needs of all the communities, the way that the current North Shore Library is able to serve the needs of our communities, especially with the proposed and the expansion project. It's really not an expansion, it's a remodeling project that we've worked very hard on. We've done a lot of focus groups, talking to members of the community, and explaining to them what we can provide for them for the cost. And I think that moving to the Brown Deer location would not serve the communities well.
Thank you. Ms. Alien?
Elizabeth Allen, 210 West Bergen Court, and I think I'm going to be repeating what other people have said, but I think it's the same thing you would hear from many people in this community. And I think the comments of the Brown Deer manager were telling when he said they didn't discuss with anyone before they bought the building because they wanted the library to stay in their community. And I think many people in the North Shore Library community feel the same way, that we would like our library to stay somewhere where we would have better access to it than if it were to move to Brown Deer. This is a library that's easy for many people to bike to. It is also on a bus line. It's on the major north-south artery that goes through these villages. For many people, it's a very convenient stop on their way to or from shopping or other activities. It is close to the high school. I think that saving money is a great thing, but if you lose all your clientele, if no one goes there anymore, then you're just paying for something that nobody is using. And in the end, you're actually losing money. So I think that if the North Shore Library were to move to Brown Deer, many people would no longer use it. They would go to Whitefish Bay. And again, you're paying for something that the people of the communities it is currently serving are not using, and then you're going to be paying, as was mentioned before, additional fees to the libraries they will be using, which will be Whitefish Bay most likely. So I think this is a very bad idea, and I would be very much against it.
Louise Peter.
Louise Petering, 7229 North Santa Monica Boulevard. I concur with what Elizabeth and previous speakers have said. There is one thing that concerned me greatly when I looked at the agenda for this board meeting, and that was the wording of the notice, consideration of Village of Brown Deer offer to join North Shore Library. When I first skimmed that, I thought, they want to come over to this location here on Fort Washington Road. However, in thinking about it, I thought I'd read a little further. I find out that we really are being proposed to have the North Shore Library subsumed by this proposal, and essentially this is a physical facility in most people's minds. That's how they identify it, not as a legal entity. And so I read this and I said, is this thing even properly noticed? Which to me is a great concern. That the notice in the agenda accurately communicate. As I stand here, I would say Village of Brown Deer seeking to join the North Shore Library and move facilities to location. That, I think, would have been a more proper notice of that particular agenda item. The data that I read in this report does not include several things. It does not include information about people like me who go to the library and look at newspapers and references. I may not check out a book, but I do use it. So that kind of data is missing. Those kind of data are missing, I should say. And I think what is really critical here is that library is a draw to those of us who live here in the community and likely has an effect on whether people might locate in Fox Point and seek to purchase a home here. So I concur with what Elizabeth said, and I hope the board certainly considers those points. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to address the board on this issue? I'm sorry, please come forward. Oh.
Did I jump anyone on that? Yeah, I'm Matt. Yep. Great.
Please state your full name.
No problem. Yeah, Matt isn't really there with them. I'm Matt Ruiz. I'm a Fox Point resident, 11823 North Santa Monica, just down the road from here. In full disclosure, I'm a member of the North Shore Library Foundation Board. I just joined it this year. I think because nobody else wanted it, I'm the treasurer now.
This meeting, that's what happened.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'm also a Fox Point resident, and so I guess, sort of in my capacity as a resident, I don't really have necessarily, a statement for or against it, because I don't know if that's appropriate, but I want to I guess I would just ask some questions, which I don't know if I'm really, permitted to do to Mr. Hall, and I thank him for coming in here and giving his presentation too. But if I can't ask him questions, I guess I would ask you guys to please ask him these questions. Just because, like any investment you're going to make, you want to do your due diligence before it, of course. So I guess here were sort of the three things that came to my mind. Number one, I heard Mr. Hall talk about the sort of staffing procedure in which a new board would be constituted, and then they would make the staffing decisions. I'm not saying that's incorrect. But if you look at, I think, attachment C to that proposal, right down the list, it says replace with Brown Deer staff through every single position on there. So I don't know if that's incorrect or a misstatement, or I'm reading it wrong or anything like that, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of how we're going to do that. Number two is, I would like to know sort of what analysis and quotes have been received for the renovation costs to actually turn it into a library. I think who's ever done a home project thinks you know what it's going to cost, and then halfway through it costs a lot more. And so I'd like to sort of know what their analysis is based on. This is in fact how much it's going to cost once we get into this. And then sort of the last thing is, I heard Mr. Hall talk about, someone asked a very good question about the expansion of services. Services are great. Services are really important. I can tell you that, my sort of Saturday morning ritual, I have a 3-year-old daughter. We go to Nicolay, she does gymnastics, and then we go across the street. We get library books from the library. If anybody's wondering why you can't get a Disney book there, it's because of her. She checks every single year out. So that's sort of our ritual. And services are great. Expanded services are even better, but only to the extent there's somebody that's going to use them. So, we can expand a bunch of services, but I'm just wondering, is there any analysis or studying that's been done in terms of, okay, when we move this thing out of the community, are people really going to go all the way around Deer? Because it sounds like a saving cost thing, but what you'd ultimately just have is spending slightly less for nothing if nobody's getting the service. So, like I said, I just want to make sure that the due diligence is being done, these type of questions are being asked before we really entertain something. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else like to be heard on this issue?
Meredith Mills, 1811 East Dean Road. I guess I have a couple of things. I agree with the other comments about the library needing to be in our community. I definitely agree with the comment that the way that it's here, saying that the offer to join North Shore Library. If the library moves to Brown Deer, it's no longer North Shore. That's not the North Shore. And it won't be accessible to people. I had kids that went to Nicolay too. I was comfortable with them driving over to the North Shore Library, even riding their bike over there. Yet my son swam at Schrader for 15 years, and I wasn't comfortable with him riding his bike from Fox Point to Schrader, so it's in the same neighborhood. So I think that, there was standing room only at the Glendale meeting last night, I heard. I don't think we have quite the turnout, and if this was brought up October 17th, which is what Scott said, 2 days after the last meeting, I feel like the Fox Point residents haven't been communicated to well, and I think that they deserve to be. Consolidating things like fire, health, dispatch, that's different. People aren't going to the fire department, they aren't going to, the dispatch department. People are going to the library, and people are using the library in the community that they live in, and I just think that that would be a travesty to move it. And I guess that's it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Halen, you have another minute, so would you like to use your third minute?
I was just going to say that it would be useful to know what expanded services, what that means, because when I looked, for example, and unfortunately I only looked very briefly at the report, it shows expanded hours. Those hours will be expanded for Brown Deer, but I do believe those are the hours that the North Shore Library already has. We already have evening hours in the North Shore. I agree that the Schedule C specifically states that the staff will be Brown Deer staff. And again, I did not realize that the square footage was, scheduled to be 16,000 square. If it's going to be the same size as the North Shore Library, there's even less reason to do this. So those were my other comments.
Would anyone else like to be heard on the library issue?
Judy Landesky, 425 West Willow Court. I'm a former employee, though short-term, of the library, and I use it regularly. I don't see any advantages to moving into Brown Deer. It's not, as the manager said, a walkable area. It's only walkable if you live right there. And it's not easy to get to. It's not going to be easy to get to for people in the Fox Point area. We have good transportation to get there, and it's a safe area. And I think we've got wonderful services. Now we've gotten what I consider expanded services with the new librarian, and I'm very happy with it. And I hate to see it go away because it's not convenient to go to Brown Deer. Thank you.
We're running out of possibilities here for speakers. Anyone else?
Thank you very much.
All right, very well. We'll close that segment of the agenda item, and we are into the discussion, so I would ask the board members for some comments. Mr. Fonseca.
Well, I'm the current representative on the Fox Point on the library board, and I wanted to give you my thoughts. Some of these things have been already said, and I do have a lot here, so I ask for your indulgence. But I think it's important. This is an important issue. One of the biggest things we have to deal with in this proposal has to do with the size of the library. I just want to reiterate that with the population, combined population of the North Shore Library communities in Brown Deer, almost 39,000. The standard recommendation is at least 1 square foot per resident, and we're in 1.25 is sometimes recognized as Kurt indicated as a minimum. But I mean, if it's that would indicate a size of library for that population of 39,000 square feet. This building is 30,000 square feet if you use all 3 floors, and 7,000 square feet of that is already leased, so that leaves 23. One of the things that really jumps out is that the space isn't big enough for the populations it serves. The other thing that jumped out to me is the renovation costs, and I understand that Brown Deer has said that they will take care of the renovation costs, but they have provided a lot of numbers and projections and have projected savings for Fox Point using those numbers, and I just don't think the numbers overall are realistic. They have projected either in the memo that they sent us $100 a square foot for renovation. The article that was in the paper said $2 million in renovation costs, which actually works out to be less than that, around $87 a square foot. When we were looking at renovation of the North Shore Library space, we were told that if we reuse shelving, we would be talking about close to $200 a square foot. And Milwaukee County has done a lot of library renovations. Their experience is more like $250 a square foot. So if you take that 25,000 square feet that's available, supposedly, for a library at this building, and look at the renovation costs to get to equip a library the way it needs to be, you're not looking at $2 million, you're looking more like $5 or $6 million. Again, Brown Deer is saying they're going to pay for that, they're going to get input from us on what should be in the library, but it just brings, in my mind, it brings into question the fiscal justification for this recommendation or request. I just, you know, if you look at the operating budget, they're projecting takes the current budget from $920,000 to $1,050,000. That's a 14% increase. But the population being served again is being increased by 50%. So it's just not realistic in my mind to expect that the budget is only going to be 14% more. And if that budget is, instead of being 1 point, a little over $1 million increases to 1.3, for instance, then those operating savings that are projected for Fox Point go away, and for all the communities in North Shore community go away. The operating budget doesn't include any rent around here. I've got clarification from Mr. Hall saying that that's intentional. The borrowing power, the usage patterns will change if the library is relocated. And right now, Brown Deer is benefiting from reciprocal borrowing income of about $80,000 a year. I think it's questionable whether that savings or the income will continue, and it may actually go negative. I think that warrants some very close scrutiny. If you look at the fiscal benefits that are outlined in the Brown Deer proposal, as I say, I question whether the operating savings are there. I think it's always prudent to be skeptical of projections like that, but there's reasons questionable here. What the real savings is the capital expenses, but if you think about what is being proposed, what's being proposed is basically replicating the current North Shore Library, just moving it to Brown Deer. We would, I think people have spoken to the loss that we would have as a result of that. For years now, I can say as long as I've been a trustee, when I became trustee, which is now 12 years ago almost, there were three main issues facing the Fox Point. One was the pool, one was the bridge, and one was the library. The bridge is behind us, the pool and the library are here. It's been that long since we have wrestled with putting the money into the North Shore Library that it deserves in order to make it the kind of facility that the communities in the North Shore Library expect and deserve. We're still facing that, despite this proposal. If we really want a library that serves the North Shore Library communities, then we need to make that investment. We kicked that can down the road too many years, and we're in the position we're in right now because of that. One of the things that's in the Brown Deer proposal is that they think that there may be 9,000 square feet that's excess space. Well, there is no excess space. You need all the space that's available in that building and then some in order to have a facility that's the right size for the population it serves. We talked about that, it's on 3 floors. It's serviced by one elevator. So if you think of the number of people who visit the library every day having to use that one elevator. I put, maybe I'll use my little maps now. How do I do that? Yeah. And then this is really, I wanted to show you this because when I looked at the map, okay, let's see.
See if we can do this.
Yeah. Yes?
Can you go move the antenna?
I don't know what it is.
Oh, it turned itself off.
Okay. And if I want to scroll through these, how do I do it?
Just
Once you
slide
get
it,
it.
or Scott, can you slide it down on the side?
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Well, we'll wait for Scott. You know, what isn't really obvious when you start talking about this in the abstract is that if you, North Shore Library goes to, this was actually prepared by the foundation. I thought, when I saw this, a little light went off in my head. Here's the current location, and here's the Brown Deer location, and this is a 2-mile radius. And they are, this shows that the bulk of the North Shore community is in that 2-mile radius, and very little of it is in 2 miles of the proposed location. I want you, Scott, if you can go to the next one.
Yep.
Okay, so here, and I need to have you go a little bit further. I don't know if you can make it smaller.
Yep.
Yeah, it's 130% right there. Yeah, make it. Okay, this is good. Okay, here's the North Shore Library communities in the dark line. Here's Brown Deer. Here's the proposed Brown Deer Library. Here's North Shore Library. This is Whitefish Bay Library. This over here is the new library replacing Mill Road, 76 and Good Hope. Going to be a brand new library. What you look at here is you say, well, you know, these people might go there. Certainly we know that Whitefish Bay is pretty close to a lot of the North Shore community. So the question is, if you take here and you move it out, what does it look like? And if you go to the next one. So here, this is what you're left with. The people here have to go either here or there. Then you go to the next one. You know, this is gone. So here's my my artwork. This is a 3-mile radius, the green. 3-mile radius from here, 3-mile radius to here, the green. So from Whitefish Bay, which is the remaining line, North Shore Library is not here anymore. So you can see that a great deal of Fox Point and most of Glendale is within 3 miles of Whitefish Bay. Just the quite a bit of River Hills, most of River Hills, and just the northwest corner of Glendale is within 3 miles of Brown Deer. And the blue is a 4-mile radius. So, if you look at that and you look at that, I think that's, if you look at that and you look at the usage map that we were given earlier, you think about where the concentration of North Shore Library users are. It's here, it's not up here. So you're going to lose all those people. The people aren't going to go to the relocated North Shore Library. That's why I want to show that. So I think the one thing that hasn't really been talked about is what I'm going to say to a large extent, what's been mentioned, is sense of community. In my view, local government's mission or goal or responsibility is to provide services to their residents, do it in a cost-effective way, respect the taxing impact. It's always easy to save money by cutting services. But then I don't think we're doing our job as good stewards of the community. Fox Point is a residential suburb. We have a hard time maintaining a sense of community. And you need that sense of community to have people willing to support the services that we provide. So our identity, the street signs, the Fox profile street signs, the white posts, the land and stone end walls, the best plowed streets in the North Shore, the skating rink, the pool, the 4th of July, the farmer's market, summer concerts, outstanding yard waste pickup, no garbage carts along the street, no streetlights, curbs, gutters, or sidewalks. These are the things that distinguish Fox Point and give it a sense of identity. And make us a community. And after 30 years, the North Shore Library is a part of Fox Point and helps define who we are as a community. So, I understand that Brown Deer has a money problem on their hands. They bought a building, they're putting their library in there. They have, from their perspective, good reasons for doing it. They have nothing to lose by trying to get other communities to join them and help them pay for it. I don't blame them for trying to do that. It's not our job to help them out of the fiscal problem. I think moving the North Shore Library to the Brown Deer location effectively means we lose the library. I also think that after neglecting our responsibility to fund capital expenses in the library for so many years, we need now to step up and do it. And I don't think we shouldn't let this proposal derail us on our job of making the North Shore Library renovation a reality. So that's my comment.
Ms. Simchich.
Well, we've had some pretty good comments tonight that's hard to follow. So some have been more colorful than others, but I appreciate Mr. Bonsted's professional thoughts. I'll follow up a little bit on that. I was Mr. Bonsted's predecessor on the library board, and when I first joined the board, I met Mr. Glazner, and his enthusiasm practically knocked me back out the library door, and he said, "We have to get a new library today." And I said, "Wait a minute, there's a lot of steps here." And by the way, that was like 5 years ago, probably. So, for those that don't know, I'm a planner by trade and training, and this is one of the most convoluted public processes I've ever seen. If you want a true partnership, you approach your partners and you have a dialogue. And the partners are, in this case, in my opinion, the communities. They are actually the library. We have not heard anything in favor of this from the library director or the library board. I think that that's a voice that somehow should have been consulted. That's just my thought. And I know what this library has gone through, by this library, I mean our library has gone through to make it as far as it has. There have been endless meetings, presentations, focus groups, etc. And that's how you get a sense of what the community wants and needs. It's not, oh my God, we gotta buy a building tomorrow, and now we have to find people to put in it. So that's my thought on the public process, which I think has absolutely been completely horrendous. That being said, if you can get past that, and I really can't, there were lots of things that I heard that were problematic. I heard comments about, well, it's a fictitious staff. It's like, it's really not, because by the way, we have a staff, and it is people. And some of those people are in this room tonight. And to say that, to have someone come and say, well, we're making up this fictitious library with a fictitious staff, and I kind of think that maybe some of our current staff don't get paid enough. Well, that's kind of stuff you should know. You should know what it takes to run a library. You should know how many people, what type of people, who sits where, what they get paid. It shouldn't be at this point in time, it shouldn't be this fantasy number, because we need something to really look at. The other thing I heard is that we want the military to be our partner. Well, I'm all for partnerships, but you know, last time I checked, many civic buildings had no weapons allowed on the doorway, and many libraries have little kids in them. And you know, quite honestly, a lot of people that don't expect people with weapons walking around. And I think it's an expectation that the military would have weapons on them. And I'm not convinced that I see that as a natural fit. I agree that, you know, with someone who I've lost track of at this point that says that the health and fire department don't get much foot traffic. You know, you relocate something for a reason, not because you happen to find a cheap building to buy. And I really think that, sorry, I'm going into my comments here. You know, I don't see that how you can expand services in a building that's fundamentally too small to service what exists at the moment. You know, there's been so much work that's happened at the North Shore Library to quantify the services and to talk about how the library, like there are people that would say that the library is completely obsolete. And while somebody maybe doesn't hold a book, I still hold books. I understand I'm a bit of a dinosaur. But if someone doesn't hold a book, the use of a library has actually changed significantly. It is changing continually. So to expand services, well, you don't know, there's been no work to figure out what it is, what do you need to change, what isn't working. And this, you know, this North Shore Library has done that work for now several years. And I just, you know, I think, you know, I just overall feel like we haven't heard from the library, first of all. Brown Deer seems to have gotten themselves in a position, which quite honestly isn't our problem. We have done nothing to engage any of our citizens other than, I agree with Ms. Petering, perhaps an ill-worded notice. Because I think that if I had been at home reading that notice, I would have been like, oh, that sounds like an okay idea. To move the building, to move the library to that other site adds 5 miles to my trip, which, you know, you gotta get there and you gotta get back. That adds 10 miles, which, you know, that's not a bikeable distance for most people, certainly not a bikeable distance for family and kids. You're going along essentially a super highway where if anyone's reading next door these days, everyone's concerned about the speed. So it's not super accessible, it's not friendly. I consider it to be a very, at this moment, totally ill-conceived process and proposal.
Other members, discussion. This is the first of what I would envision to be a number of meetings that this item will be addressed. This is pretty new to all of us, and we're still gathering information and hearing from citizens and each other. Mr. Abbott?
Well, I was just going to suggest that this is the first and last meeting we hear about it. I think that maybe we should take a straw vote. I think it's overwhelming. We're going to say no to this proposal. And I think we should probably put it to a vote and just kill it.
Well, we are one of 4 members of the North Shore Library, so when you say
Well,
kill it,
that's the next point.
we can make our voices, our village voice heard on it, but there are other components to it. Yes, Mr. Manager?
I think, speaking to Mr. Kraft's point, I think candidly, Mr. Hall's been around a long time. I think he gets the sense of our village board, and I don't think you need to probably take a motion unless you feel like you want to. But I guess.
Well, I'm reacting to President Frazier's comment that this would be the first of many meetings, and I concur more with Trustee Kravitz's comment that I hope we don't have a number of meetings on this. I think the proposal is not in the best interest of the residents, and that's my argument.
Mr. Trotter?
Yeah, I agree, and you can get the sentiment of the proposal, or he can, of what our thoughts and ideas are. But I think it's more of just putting it on record for when Glendale and Bayside and River Hill say, well, they asked the question of what did the other 4 communities of partnership, what did they officially kind of say on this? I would like to have something where we do say, and yeah, my recommendation is that we would, it says here in the agenda, may vote to indicate its position on the proposal. So I'd like to vote that we reject the proposal that's on the agenda. Yeah, I could put in a motion, yeah. Okay, so.
Motions are always in order. Ms. Hitchens?
Before we get there, I don't know if we will, but, so the question was asked, what happened last night at Glendale? And we heard that it was discussed and there was no motion made. The real answer is that it was a very full meeting and very contentious and very negative towards the proposal. So that's the flavor of what happened. So while there was no motion made, it's not yet been seen as a positive from the one partner that has viewed it publicly. So I would just like to clarify that.
Was that from the trustees or the public?
I'm sorry?
Was that the trustees being contentious or the public? Or both?
The public was opposed to the process, and
And
so it was not seen as favorable.
Yes, Mr. Trotter?
I move that we reject the proposal of the Village of Brown Deer to offer to join the North Shore Library in the location to Brown Deer.
Second. Second by Mr. Ullman. Discussion. I have a few thoughts. I don't have enough information to take a position on this. This is very new to me and to all of us. I would like to hear from more citizens. I think Mr. Bonstead raises some interesting questions that really would require further study. He raised the question of whether Brown Deer's fiscal or financial analysis is accurate. I would like more information about that, because a big benefit of this proposal, if it is in fact a benefit, is significant fiscal savings to the village. If it's real, that may lead us in one direction. If it's illusory, it may lead us in another. Another comment that I've heard is that the greater distance from Fox Point of the proposed new library would diminish patronage from Fox Point residents. That may be true, but it may not. I think that there is probably a lot of information out there about those kind of issues, and I'd like to study closely that information.
those are the two major points that I would like more consideration of. And I think that when we vote on this, I would have to abstain. I just don't have enough now to take any kind of decision. Ms. Hinchich.
I would maybe take a slightly parallel path to you. I don't know that we want to take a motion tonight, and the reason would be some of what we do is tied to our neighbors. Not all of what we do is tied to our neighbors, and that's a very definitive notion saying we will not combine. I think that this proposal, as it's brought forward to us tonight, is completely ill-conceived. I think it's had absolutely no public process whatsoever. And I think that both of those things are immensely problematic. You know, like I said, this is not how you go about establishing a partnership. We have not heard from the library board. We have heard from a resident. It was unclear to me if he was speaking as a resident or as part of the foundation. However, I think that those are, in this case, I think I've seen the letter from the head of the foundation. It's representing a similar viewpoint at least. So certainly in sync with the foundation, not in favor of moving. And, you know, is there something that could change the equation to make a partnership appropriate? Yes. Is it this proposal? In my mind, no. And I think that your motion perhaps rules out something someday that might work. That's my only concern. However, boy, I am opposed to what's on paper now.
I do want to clarify the motion, though. It was on this proposal. It
In that
was to reject this proposal. Yeah.
Right, in that.
So,
Okay, because the motion,
I'm sorry,
the
go
motion
ahead.
was to read, I think your motion needs to be clarified. And
Well, Mr. Prado, before we get to Mr. Fonseca, would you like to clarify or?
Yeah, well, real quickly, I didn't want to belabor the point, but I hear your comments, but I think that's, if there's another proposal in the future that's presented before this board and more information is brought to light in partnerships, absolutely, I'd be open to examining that. I think that's part of our due diligence, but the motion I was making was to clarify was, again, the end it says, take a position, may indicate, vote any, its position on the proposal. So there is a terminology in the agenda that says proposal. So my recommendation, and I kind of wanted this just kind of show the other communities, of the three communities or four, that where we kind of stand on this, is that on this proposal, the clarification is that we vote to reject this proposal of the consideration from the Village of Brown Deer, offer to join the North Shore Library and move the location to Brown Deer, which is in the proposal. From moving the location, that's part of the proposal. So in the end of that, you don't need, because that's inherent in the proposal.
Mr. Roman, did you wish to be heard?
I agree with Marty 100%. I think we should vote on it tonight.
So would you second his modified motion?
Well, let's be clear. I don't know that you modified it. I think you explained it, but I didn't take that to be a modified motion.
I actually thought, I agreed with what you said. I think the first motion that you made was clear because it was for this proposal.
Correct.
I was with you on that.
Yeah.
Before we get to Mr. Fonseca, Ms. Sumner, any comments?
I mean, you know, I think that the cost savings are interesting. And, you know, originally when I looked at it, I was like, oh, well, you know, that would be nice. But then at the same time, I thought, you know, my family uses the North Shore Library a lot, and I don't really know how often we would go. But maybe, you know, we would go to the Brown Deer Library and go somewhere else over there at the same time. You know, I think like everybody's presented some really good arguments, and I'm open to either way. Like I'm open to considering this more and hearing more about it and like better studies, or I'm fine with just completely turning it down. It's not.
Mr. Fonseca.
Yeah, I want to throw out, the possible way to soften and that is to say, rather than maybe saying we reject it, is that we, either say the sense of the board is that, or the board is inclined to reject it, or is sense of the board is not in favor of the proposal, something like that. Something that says you don't like the proposal, but doesn't necessarily close the door completely. So I don't know if any of that makes sense. That's the thinking I have.
Mr. Kravitz?
Well, I, with all due respect, I do not think that makes sense. I think it would be not fair to leave the village of Brown Deer or whoever is wanting us to join what would be the Brown Deer Library. I don't think it's fair to leave them on that we have any interest in that. I think it's pretty clear that maybe the choices comes down to Brown Deer is going to build a library. Maybe we should just not have a North Shore Library, because it seems like many of our residents will then go to Brown Deer or go to Whitefish Bay, and we can relieve ourselves entirely of the library.
Yeah, I just want to respond to that. Because we're part of the Milwaukee County Federated Library System, we would incur more costs without our library. So that's the way it works. But you know, I have spent a lot of time the last few days thinking about a North Shore Library that serves Glendale, Fox Point, Bayside, and River Hills at that Brown Deer location, and I just don't think it's those. I'm sympathetic to what Trustee Kravitz says. I think there's value.
I think you laid that out rather elegantly. I think we've heard from some people who are in the know, and why lead them on by softening it? Why not just vote? Why not just say we're not interested in that? And let's move on to something else.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Then we'll hold a vote by show of hands. We'll do this by show of hands. Those in favor, raise their hand. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We move to agenda item 5B, pool consultant selection. I'll ask Mr. Squatter to present on this.
Okay. Hopefully at this point in the process, this will be slightly less controversial. Use some softer words will be used, but did everyone get this?
They should have it received.
Okay. Yeah. Just to address this amount of advance, I tried to put this into a one-page synopsis of the process that we went through. We interviewed, basically to kind of go through this real quickly is, the next step in the process, we need a little bit more paid professional engineering work. We've kind of gotten away with a lot and free to very low cost. And to kind of take it the next step to gather more information, really get a professional firm. We did an RFP, we got 4 responses back. We knew about one of the ones already for Buck Aquatic, so we interviewed the other 3, but in person in mid-October, the pool committee that is. After we interviewed those 3, we did consider all 4 of the proposals, of which I have all of them here. If anyone's interested, I also have them electronically, the village does. Some good discussion back and forth with the pool committee, but our recommendation was to move forward with Ayers Associates. I thought their partnership, particularly with Iconica and Carico, or 2 business partners that they have, made their proposal very strong. After the committee made that recommendation, village staff also had a conversation to ask some more specific questions on the proposal. And if people want to kind of know, like, the next 2 pages are really kind of what the outcomes are of that, like what are they going to deliver. The only caveat that I would say from this memo is the proposals, and most of the firms are in the 3-month range to completion of the project, and I know they also did mention the interview is with timing the holidays, probably give them another month, probably more months time. But I certainly think if we can get going, we can finish this portion of this project by spring. With that, what I'd like to do is, move forward with the recommendation to have Beers Associates conduct this next portion of pool study or information and background regarding the pool environment assessment.
I'll ask the manager to make a few comments.
Sure, and Michael and I met with the two finalists, I guess, Ayers and MSA. Found them both to be qualified, they both have different strengths. But we really wanted to spend, most of the time communicating with both of the potential vendors. Since we both thought they were qualified, whichever way, we knew which way the pool committee was going because we met with them after that. That we wanted to focus on the things that were important from the staff side. And so we spent a lot of time, frankly, talking about the costing part of it and the cash flows of this thing, that this is going to be an important part of it. Because we didn't want to end up with, certainly there are architects, engineering firms that like to draw stuff, build stuff, and all that sort of thing, which is important. But obviously, we're talking real money with this thing. And that's going to have to be part of the analysis, and not that we're going to get to the point through this stage of having that totally wrapped up, but it's something you just can't do without looking at, otherwise we're not really getting our money's worth. So we talked about that. We talked about idiosyncrasies of potential locations, because both locations have strengths and weaknesses, to just kind of reinforce some of those things that, candidly, you can say in my office with a door shut, you may not want to say the same way in public. So we tried to raise sensitivities to potential sites. So they're aware of the stuff. So we get a better work product if they go in with full knowledge of what Fox Point's really about. So we have no problems with the recommendation. I think it's fine, and we would concur with Marty and Christine.
Mr. Fonstad.
Yeah.
Question about the budget impact on this.
We had budgeted for it. It's there, and we have been planning to do this for a while. Yeah. We put it back as an expenditure. We have the cash now. We have certainly the cash to do it.
I think that we approve the retention of Beers Associates as set forth.
Second. Second by Mr. Crowder. Further discussion. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak to this matter? All right, so we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Crowder, and Ms. Inchik, for your good work on the pool committee. We're moving forward. Future agenda items. Does any board member wish to place a matter on the future agenda?
I have a question about that.
Yes.
The gentleman here who spoke with it on Seneca that regarding the water, is that something to put on? I mean, I get this unfulfilled feeling of people coming up, and it's like they say something and then we just move on. How do we address these problems?
Mr. Manager.
Well, candidly, I've never seen this gentleman before. He came tonight. He's never contacted me, but I was watching he and Scott have lengthy conversations out there. What normally happens is that, if it's a public works issue, I will ask Scott to make sure he follows up, and much like tree removals or anything else, we deal with it as staff level because that's our job. But sometimes people feel they have to come and talk to you all, make the request, and I'll be honest with you, most people don't. They just call our office and we take care of it. But there are people that still do it. This gentleman is totally fine, but it's not really a policy issue for you all. It's a problem that, and frankly, I'm going to have to talk to Scott more and more about it as well.
Well, we can make it.
But I can give you a report back, certainly.
We can make it a policy issue if we want to.
Well, am I the only one that has this frustration? People come up and they say things and then I don't see anything happen.
Well, it may be happening because staff is dealing with it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, then, this is, we're not, this is a discussion outside the realm of future agenda items, but I think, in that connection, we kind of depend on the manager and his staff to update us on these things that come up before the board, and I think, so, maybe we need to be a little more diligent in making sure that that happens.
You wish we could actually do it.
Okay, so that begs the question, why are we as trustees even hearing it if we have no power and no say-so and no action to help solve the problem?
So I'll respond to a couple of things. We have a public comment period on the agenda. We don't control what people bring to us. They bring whatever they will, as is very apparent today. I guess if somebody brings something that you would like to be sure is addressed during the public comments or during this section, the announcements, or the future agenda items, you could move to place on the future agenda a report from staff on what has happened to resolve the concern raised X. That would be an appropriate motion.
But otherwise, right, we just try to solve the problem.
Okay, but maybe it's just me, but I'm not seeing the resolve of those problems, so I'm feeling frustrated, sitting here listening to 3 years worth of citizens coming up, and it like falls into a dead bucket as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and I can certainly do with what Eric mentioned, just do better reporting back. For example, I think it was Liz brought up that, you request if we have donations, that we report back. Was that 2 years ago? Yeah, I think it was, maybe not. And so we've been, whenever we have those, and we haven't really had anything out of the ordinary, that we do that. So we need to do a better job of communicating back to you, but I'd like to think that people aren't coming back and talking to you because we take care of it.
Well,
That's the
also,
thing.
we're, as board members, we're certainly capable of writing down what is brought before us and calling staff and asking about follow-up, which I do sometimes.
But then another about the lighting at Congregation Shalom. I agree 100% with that person.
This is not the place
Yeah,
for this,
no.
I'm sorry, this is not.
We're not agended for it, but we are agended to bring new agenda items to a future meeting if you wish to make a motion.
But how do I make a motion to examine the lighting problem at Congregation Shalom?
You can move whatever you'd like to move.
I'd like to move that we examine the lighting problem, maybe not specifically at Congregation Shalom, but there's lighting problems at Stroma School at times and in other institutions where they just wipe us out. And so I would like us to examine what our lighting.
So you move to place on the agenda a discussion of the village lighting ordinance, particularly in general, and in particular how it impacts properties along Santa Monica.
Yes.
Is there a second? Hearing none, the motion dies for lack of a second. Any other matter that a board member would like to place on an upcoming agenda? Then we move to item 7, announcements. Does any board, I'll go last. Does any board member wish to make an announcement? We'll start with Trustee Bonstead.
No.
Trustee Simchich.
No.
Trustee Sumner.
No.
Trustee Toronto.
No announcements.
Trustee Kravitz.
Well, I want to have a kudos to Trustee Sumner for her political run. And for me, to be anything over and above this trustee, I'd have to have my head examined. But sorry loss, but congratulations on that.
Mr. Ullman.
No announcements.
I have several. On October 5, 2018, I had the privilege of representing the village of Fox Point at the investiture of Kathleen Reinhardt as the new president of Cardinal Stritch University. It was a very nice event attended by by Mayor Barrett and Mayor Kennedy from our neighboring city of Glendale and the Archbishop. It was a very nice ceremony, and I was very proud and honored to be part of it. Yesterday, on November 12, 2018, Fox Point hosted the monthly meeting of the Intergovernmental Cooperation Council, the ICC, and this room. It was a very nice and successful meeting, and again, it was my honor to represent the village in hosting the ICC. Mr. Manager?
You know, I don't really, the only thing I have is that it's kind of a personal thing, but I kind of like it. I've been invited to participate and be a member of a roundtable with the Secretary of the Department of Revenue. And so it'd be like 15 to 20 of us from around the state to work on issues of local finance. Imagine that. Yeah, I'm gonna do. I kind of, you know, I'll talk that. Just kind of say, Christine's looking at me saying, shut up. That's all I have, but it'll be interesting, and one of the things we're focusing on the last, we deal with the issues of expenditure restraint, which I know is an issue for all the communities, and we talked about it before, but the fire department has talked about it. We're going to talk about personal property taxation, talk about some computer taxation, which is now been taken off, impacts on TIF, which we don't have any TIFs, but, so it's good to have some input with that thing, and it was actually pretty honored to be asked, and with the change of administration, they're continuing this roundtable because revenue sees it as significant to reach out to local government people, I guess, and they get well. So.
Congratulations. I move to adjourn. Second by Mr. Corrado. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you for coming.